Society of Baltimore, Maryland. Originally from Philadelphia, Kirsten was born to Spiritist parents and later relocated to Maryland in 2011. She has been very involved with the Spiritist movement, having participated in events like the Spiritist Medical Congress and various Spiritist symposiums across the United States. Let's welcome Kirsten to the stage. And last but not least, with an impeccable taste and fashion, I'm going to invite Suzana Simoes, is an active member of the Spiritist movement. Suzana has worked as a member of the Spiritist Federation of Florida and United States Spiritist Federation. She is one of the founders of the Conscious Living Spiritist group in Miami, along with Andreia, and she works primarily overseeing the work in English. She is an active speaker in the United States and abroad. Please welcome Suzana to the stage. Now, we were all having our little discussion before coming here today, and we were talking about how we were going to take a look at the world in distress and taking it from three interesting points of view. How, in many ways, it came into being a little bit of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, because we're going to talk a bit about the past, present, and future. And so I'm going to start with our spiritist of the past, as it were. Pardon my bad jokes. It's my call sign. Andreia.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the warm welcome. The admiration and fraternity is equal to you. I also admire you, as well as these panelists here. I would like to also welcome the United States Spiritist Federation for the invitation. I would also like to congratulate for the very well organized event that we are participating in. It's truly, truly nice to see how it's turning out in another new state that we get to meet, and also meeting new faces as well as seeing old friends once again. It's truly a pleasure. I would like to start with question 793 of the Spirits book, because as you can tell, our presentation is going to be based on taking action to heal a world in distress. And I just would like to let you guys know I am not a psychologist, so I would like to evoke the powerful presences of Allan Kardec and the greatest psychotherapist that has ever been among us, Jesus. And so I will start with question 693 of the Spirit's book, in which Allan Kardec asks, by what sign may one recognize a completed civilization? And the answer, you will recognize it by its moral development. Allan Kardec goes on to comment on, it's a short answer that I summarized it, but there's a lot more. So if you don't have the book, make sure that you do get it at the USSF table so that you can read a little bit further on the answer. But Allan Kardec comments on this, and he says, of two cultures that have reached the summit of the social scale, the one that may be called the more advanced in the true sense of the word is the one where the least selfishness, cupidity, and pride are found, where the customs are more intellectual and moral than material, where intelligence can develop with more freedom, where there is more kindness, good faith, and reciprocal benevolence and generosity, where the prejudices of caste and birth are less rooted, for such prejudice are incompatible with true love for one's neighbor, where the laws do not grant any special privileges and are the same for the last as for the first, where justice is administered with the least partiality, where the weak always find support against the strong, where human life, beliefs, and opinions are better respected, where there are fewer unhappy individuals, and lastly, where persons of goodwill are always sure they will not lack the minimum of what is needed to live on. This comment by Allan Kardec is sufficient to answer the main topic for this panel. How can we take action to heal a world in distress? It's here. The recipe is right here. But it's not as easy, right? We're gonna go the spirit of Spiritist past, right, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back in time. It's important that when we start considering this, we start thinking about our Master Jesus. A lot of people are not yet acquainted with the teachings of Spiritism, but very few can say they haven't heard about Jesus, right? I would say that. And even more about the message of love and fraternity. And even further, when he would heal people, the healing that was of physical, emotional, and spiritual, bringing the ballast needed for one to live in harmony, he would always point out a very specific phrase. Who knows that? If you know it, you get a book for free, even if there's a little paper underneath it. Come on. What would he say whenever he healed someone? Who Jussara and Joan can't answer. What was that? Very well. Go and sin no more, or go and don't do it again, right? He was addressing the past that brought the person to the present. But it was an uplifting message. It was not filled with judgment. He was basically saying, whatever brought this on, don't do it again. Here's a new opportunity for you to start again. And it's very profound and impacting. And perhaps this is why Joana de Angelis, who was mentioned so much earlier today, and as well as she should be, she stated in the book, Life, Challenges and Solutions, Jesus in Our Days, she would say, we urgently need to bring Christ back. Not a crucified figure, but one represented by a true friend, a doctor, a master, psychotherapist of our souls. So when we started thinking about this and brainstorming on how would we bring the topic today, I decided to try to bring this aspect of looking to the past to see how we can take action to heal a world in distress, and then passing on the baton to Kirsten. And so this is why I wanted to bring Jesus exactly where we are. Kardec comes a few hundred years later to bring a Spiritism, which is the third revelation, and symbolizes Jesus walking among us once again, inviting us to be a little kinder to ourselves, to be less judgmental of our mistakes and others as well, to reflect upon his teachings in such a way that we are able to apply it in modern days. Our history, our world is going through one of the most important aspects when we consider the law of progress and how far we have come at this time. When he proposes that we should strive to seek to build the kingdom of heaven, of God, inside our heart, he was symbolically speaking about something very specific. We look at a world in distress which is not aligned with the kingdom of God. Would you agree? It doesn't really make a lot of sense when we're looking at it. Am I supposed to keep talking?
Yeah, 5 more minutes.
Okay. No, wait, 5 more minutes.
That's what we agreed to.
That's fine. So Joana de Angelis, when she's bringing this analysis and reflection of Jesus, in the book A Light in the Darkness, she stated, a morally dark night covers the earth. Distress dominates the human landscape. Where is humanity leaded? I can't answer that in 5 minutes, right? I can't. But we can personally do a review of how we've been living and why our world is in reality in distress. Does it have to do with individuals, with people like me, like you, that have had a past, right? Not only this life, but previous reincarnations. And we look at ourselves as the summary of all that we've been, of all that we've done. And many of us consider the fact that the best mistakes, the things that we have made are failures, or that we carry within this guilt that whether it's not reflected on something that happened in this life, perhaps it is found in a previous existence. And it is actually emerging as an opportunity for us to take a deep look, utilizing the opportunity of reincarnation that we have at hand to work out the knot, that which is still bringing pain, disharmony, imbalance in every possible way, spiritually, physically, emotionally, which is why we are talking about this topic today. So we need to be objective. We thought about the great characters in the Gospels that we've so come to admire. Paul of Tarsus, on his way to Damascus, saw Christ, inviting him to seek another objective of living. Mary of Magdalene, after encountering him, left that madness of living behind. Zacchaeus, the law tax collector, who after meeting Christ also took a way of living that was completely different from what he was living. But what if they had stalled in their steps, considering they have just met the most perfect being on the earth, and said, oh my God, I am so filled with remorse, I'm not going to be able to go forward. And in a letter that Paul wrote to the Philippians, chapter 3, verses 13 through 14, he left us with an invaluable tip. He said, brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining forward towards what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Jesus Christ. Basically, he's telling us not to look back at past failed relationships, but rather experiences that brought us to where we are. Memories, the type of temptations that took us to where maybe mistakes were made. To stop dwelling so much on what happened and rather use it, utilize it to make an impact today. In seeking spiritual path to mental balance, in taking action to heal a world in distress, one of the main teachings of Jesus was mentioned today earlier was love your neighbor as yourself. As yourself. There is a lot of people not feeling love for themselves. And to finalize, I would like to leave you with a phrase from Martin Luther King, very impactful, that perhaps summarizes how we can take action to heal a world in distress while we're healing ourselves from past mistakes. He stated, on the parable of the Good Samaritan, I imagine that the first question the priest and the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But by the very nature of his concern, the Good Samaritan reversed the question. He said, if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him?
Thank you so much. Bringing this forward to the presence, we will now bring the floor to Kirsten.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and it's an honor to be here and amongst my esteemed colleagues. I kind of wanted to, we did spend a good amount of time preparing this and having discussions and ruminating about this topic. It's such an important topic, mental health, as it relates to spirituality and obviously under the guise of Spiritism. When you think about death, when you think about a loved one dying, now bear with me here. You might be like, we're not talking about death in this panel. Hold on. Just stay with me for a second, okay? When we talk about death, or we think about, older generation, older people dying, of this disease or that disease, you don't often think, or we don't often realize that one of the number one killers is not heart disease. It's not cancer. Those are in the top 10, top 5. One of the top killers, which has been increasing in our world, suicide. So tell me that mental health is not important. And we can show you statistics. Who here is familiar with the story of the prodigal son? Anybody? 2 people, 3, 4, 5. Come on, people, come on.
Oh, I see about a third.
Hands, wave them high, be proud. All right. What happened with the prodigal son? He took all his dad's money, he spent all of it, and then eventually he came back, right? But nobody ever talks about how long it took for him to come back. Why is that? It took him a while, even after he had blew through his dad's money, his whole inheritance. You would think, why didn't he just go back? His dad would have loved him and taken him back sooner. But there is a few key components that, much like the prodigal son, is in us as well, that we suffer from. Anybody know what that might be? Pride. And what else? Guilt. Shame.
One more.
Right there. Ego. Oh, yeah, good. Shame and guilt. It keeps us from being like that prodigal son, getting back on the straight and narrow. And a very important aspect, I'm going to share this book here in a second. A very important aspect when we talk about the title of today's panel, how do we take action? Because the reality is, we know that there's a tremendous amount of suffering. What do we do? What do we do?
Mhm.
So I think I speak for the panel here when I say that we are not far removed from anyone else on this panel. We too have walked through literal hell on earth, through darkness, have experienced that firsthand, and what that feels like. And what it feels like to be a Spiritist, to be a Christian, and to not be able to combat that darkness with all the knowledge you have in the world. What comes with that? Guilt, shame, lots of shame. That holds us back, Joanna says. And I don't know how many of her books that are out there. Times of Health and Conscientiousness, Existential Conflicts, which is outside to purchase. So many of her books, as well as I have to mention the notable Dr. Brené Brown, who Sue and I have a fond love of her research on shame, and how looking at that, how important it is for us to acknowledge, especially as Spiritists, as Christians, to say and acknowledge, as my friend Dan Assisi yesterday, call a spade a spade. Call it what it is. We all fall short. We are all prodigal children, every single one of us. And so, Andreia, you mentioned something when you were talking. What if, the disciples who also committed, wrongdoings, what if they would have given up? What if Paul would have been like, I murdered too many people? What if he just gave up? We wouldn't have the Saul who turned Paul. But someone did give up. Someone who to this day in history, even within Christianity, who we don't often talk about, that we vilify, Judas. He could not face what he had done. Oftentimes, the story that we're told is that Judas gave Jesus up. He was a traitor. If you read in the book Boa Nova or Good News, you learn that Judas, in his mind, he thought he knew more than Jesus. He said, I'm going to do some PR work for Christ. I'm going to get him known. But that backfired. And when he realized what he had done, he could not come to terms with it, and he took his life. how do we come to terms with our darkness? Simple. Simple. I'm going to tell you what it is. It's extremely difficult. Pardon my French, damn near impossible, but possible, is to face ourselves. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, there's a chapter entitled, or subchapter entitled, Obedience and Resignation. When you walk through hell, you will learn you're faced with two choices. You learn to submit, not in the submission where we are giving up, but a submission to this higher power, to not be afraid of the darkness, but to face it head on. To look at the darkness like it is a teacher that I didn't know that I needed, that I've spent my whole life running from, but now is knocking on my door saying, I'm ready for you. Come on, I'm ready for you. Come on. And what do? No, I don't want it. Obedience, resignation, accepting what is that my time? Accepting there's no way out of our darkness but through it. There's no way. And what is astounding, if there's anyone in this room who's ever walked through something really dark, and if you have been able to come out the other side, you will, I promise you, you will be amazed what the strength that Jesus gives us, that God gives us, when we stop to pray. And we always say that in the Spirit's book, they say if we pray, they give us spiritual CPR. Who knows how to do CPR in this room? Oh, wow. Oh, gosh. Wow, that's great. I feel so, I'm in a good spot. So if you're ever in a bad spot and you need some spiritual CPR, pray, because the Spirit's book says, the good and noble spirits say, we will give you courage, we will give you patience and resignation. Because they cannot take away our darkness. We are meant to walk through it. And we are so trained into running, because it's a defense mechanism. Joanna talks about this in one of her books, Defense Mechanisms of the Ego. Dr. Anahy was talking about it earlier today. It's a natural, right? There's fire, your hand retracts back. But now is the time when pain comes a knocking on our door, not to run. So if I can recommend one last thing in my last minute and 30 seconds, there's so many books and there's so many wonderful Spiritist books. We always recommend the Codification, the 5 Pillars of Spiritism, the Gospel, the Spirit's book, Medium's book, Genesis, Heaven and Hell. There's a lot of other books, the Joanna D'Angelo series as well is really good. But there's one book that personally, and forgive me for the personal there, that I felt is underrated still yet and needs to be studied more alongside Joanna's books, alongside so many books really. But if you experience mental health issues, you know someone that experiences mental health issues, you've experienced it, a loved one has, whatever the issue is, or you simply just want to know more, this book, Psychiatric and Spirit Obsession Disorders, is life-changing. The information that they share. So friends, if I can tell you one last thing, never give up. There is hope. Thank you very much.
Always. Kirsten, it's funny because I remember we were talking about the same subject, just you and me, on our own little personal chat, and you also recommended that same book to me a couple months ago, and I know it's on my list of things to read, but it has been something I remember because it is an issue that is widely ranged, but hopefully we can see a path forward into the future here. So, Suzana, give us hope, lay us down the path.
I will do my best. So thank you both for a great start. Andreia brought to us the role of the past in mental health issues, and I think it highlights to us the importance of forgiveness. I think Kirsten talked about this very incredible barrier that we have in our societies, unfortunately. Although we have done tremendous amount of progress with mental health and breaking the stigma, how many of us is truly comfortable in sharing our darkness, in our spiritist centers without the fear of being seen as weak, or what's wrong with you, or where is your faith? So it's important that we talk about this. It's important that we take action, and there is action that each one of us must take. The action is to continue to disseminate Spiritism, and the action is to develop an awareness that mental health issues is not something that someone else has. It's very much part of our humanity. I would like to remind all of us that we live in a planet of trials and expiations, and in the Gospel, chapter 3, we are told that this planet is a hospital. So I like to joke that none of us is in our very right mind in this planet. So perhaps part of the beginning of this conversation is to equalize things and make less about others and more about all of us. Spiritism brings an incredible contribution to the issue of mental health when it comes to giving us the perspective of the future, which Daniel talked about when he talked about the immortality. And what is really special about it is because there are many other philosophies that do believe in a future, but this future is very fuzzy, it's abstract, and Spiritism offers us a future that is something that we can lean on, an idea of a concrete future. So much of our anxiety comes from uncertainty, from questions that we have. So it's important to know what is in this future so that we can take the first action, which is, along with forgiveness, with self-love, it is to study. It is to understand who we are and what is that is ahead of us. So I want to build a very beautiful cathedral. And so Spiritism offers us some really important bricks in this construction and in the understanding of the future. So it puts life into this much broader perspective, whereas now we understand that we existed before coming here. We are here in the present moment, and there's so much that we can do addressing our minds, our issues without embarrassment, with less guilt. But looking into the future, we understand that there is a future, there is continuity, there is a tomorrow waiting for us, and that today, we are our very best version ever. And tomorrow, we are going to be even a better version of we are today. Because together with the idea of future, what Spiritism offers us, which is such a powerful and consoling and soothing idea is the idea of progress. We are always progressing. And so if today you find yourself struggling, if today you find yourself in the middle of a crisis, just know that this crisis does not define you. It's just a moment. And it is the law that things progress, that things pass, that better days come. So not only your dark moment does not define you, it is just that. It is a moment. And it is a moment that is rich. A lot of times we see darkness and crisis as being the end. It feels like that. It may not be able to feel like this is a really good version of myself because of the troubles of the mind. But believe me, it is in the darkness, it is in the gist of the crisis that lies the absolute best resources for your awareness and for your healing and transformation. A lot of times we envy the one who is in peace, but when crisis hits, our being is being shaken and we are being invited to take action. Life tells us, hey, it's time to take action. So crisis is a door of opportunity for us to actually take a step forward into awareness and into our own transformation. With this whole idea of immortality and this whole idea of a future, we also understand that there is a God, that there is a law that is carefully, think about a father, a mother, and a toddler, how the toddler is learning to walk and the parents are around kind of guiding that toddler so that he will find or walk straight. The same thing is happening to each one of us. God is doing just that. The law is doing just that. So action number one is to study about those things, is to understand the purpose of life, is to understand what the future holds for us, is to listen in the depths of our minds, the words of Christ saying and talking to us in so many ways about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is a fatality. The kingdom of heaven is our final destination. No matter how troubled you are right now, it is God's will that you experience the kingdom of heaven, meaning health, meaning abundance, meaning inner peace. And this whole idea that Spiritism brings to us, this paradigm of immortality, gives us something very important in any crisis, mental health issues as well, which is hope. And someone did talk about hope earlier on. Hope is the fuel and is a very important resource for resilience and for healing. It's hard to heal without hope. Hope is something that we have to have in ourselves and also hope in the future, whether we're talking about the next minute, whether we're talking about the next day or the next life. But it is hope that's going to get us up every morning and to continue to press forward towards the future. Now, the journey between the present moment and this future is going to be difficult. Nobody ever said that would be easy. It is difficult because we remain in our stage of evolution still deeply disconnected from the source, from the essence of who we are, from God. And no matter how much we believe in those things, no matter how much we know, we will falter. We will have our moments of darkness and difficulty. And so Paul writes to Ephesians and gives the Ephesians, in knowing the difficulties and the struggles, a very good advice, which I'll share with you. He says, therefore, put on the full armor of God. so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all of this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. So Spiritism does that for us. It helps us to stand our ground. We might be broken, we might be shattered, we might be bent, but the idea of a future, the idea of immortality allows us to stand firm in face of all the challenges that we face. He also speaks about the evil that we have to face. Nowadays, we understand this evil as being our unattended wounds, our shadows, our frailty. And he recommends to put on this armor of God. I wish we could talk about each one of the pieces, but we don't have time, nor I know what my time is anymore. But it doesn't matter because I will go over a few minutes. So it's a good thing that the thing went up. So in any case, he talks about putting up the helmet of salvation. And I was struck by the statistics, as was mentioned earlier today, with the placebo effect for healing. I actually went to look it up, and it talks about how powerful our minds is. And here is Paul telling us to take action by putting the helmet of salvation, by caring for our minds and for our thoughts. We have to remember that the mind is where our psychic environment is formed based on the thoughts that we're emitting, and it's also where our relationships start. Because depending on the vibration that we are emitting, we are attracting incarnates and discarnates to be part of our day-to-day life. When we think about mental health, we cannot discard the role that obsessive process may have in enhancing the symptoms and the difficulties. So protecting the mind means nurturing our thoughts with altruistic, with good content. It means elevating our vibration. It means taking action. And whenever you feel like you can't handle it, do a prayer. Open that window of connection with the higher spirits. Meditate. Take care of the hygiene of your mind in the same way and with the same care that you do the hygiene of your body. And as you take care of your mind, you will notice that little by little, you're going to start also changing the network of people that are day to day with you. Some people will go and some new people will come, setting the space and the better environment for a healthier future. And finally, take the shield of faith. If hope, Emmanuel says in the book called The Consoler, that hope is the light of the moon in the darkest of the nights, but faith is the sun, is the light of the sun. This morning, as I reviewed this small talk, I was sitting on a desk and I saw the sun rising behind the screen of the computer, and I thought to myself, this is faith. Is to know that although we might be experiencing tremendous amount of darkness, the sun will rise. Will always rise, no matter what. And sometimes all that is asked from us is to be patient. Wait just a little bit more. Hang in there, because there is a future. And faith is the moment where, although we know everything, and part of the problem that we face in our humanity is that we partially know. We know intellectually, but we don't know yet wholeheartedly about all those things that I'm talking about. But if you are in the darkness, hang in there. Faith is when our cognition can no longer save us, and we go down on our knees and we recognize that we can't do it alone. And we reach out to the person next to us, and we reach out to God, who is the one that can grant us the power, that can grant us the love to feel, as Daniel said, that we truly belong, that there is a purpose for living, and the help us to choose to live. Thank you.
Talking about your little lecture here with the armor and stuff like that. And I know for me personally, as being war buff myself, I remember that the phalanx for the Greeks, when they locked shields of faith together with other people, you become stronger. And it was something that I've noticed too, especially like I said, as I discussed in our intro, I've gained so much strength and support from you, and you've been from other centers. Same with my old centers that I've been with and I'm part of. It's amazing how much the Spiritist community can come together when you are in need for a variety of different reasons. This time it's mental health, but it has been an open spot, as mentioned, a hospital, but it is a place to come when you are in need. And I have found warmth. I have found a home coming to a Spiritist center whenever I'm in trouble. And this is something that, like I said, this is a topic, I know for me personally, I'm taking this one very personal. And it's something that, like I said, the Spirit Center has been there for me to help me. And the topics that you've brought here today have also been very wonderful and helpful for me. So I thank you so much for being here as part of this panel. And I thank you all for having us here today.
Thank you to all the panelists very much. If you are moved, touched, inspired, grab your hand and touch your heart. Yeah, there you go. That's where it lives. Thank you. Let's take a few moments now to watch a video presentation scripted by Dr. Sonia Doi, currently the president of the U.S. Spiritist Medical Association, a nonprofit educational organization that supports and advances the paradigm of integrative medicine and spirituality, focusing on treatment approaches that champion the body-mind-spirit concept. The SMI US proposes a new approach to healthcare based on the spiritual principles of Spiritism. Let's watch it.
The world is constantly changing. Some changes are gradual and take so long that are hardly noticed, but others are more abrupt and affect all its inhabitants, like the coronavirus pandemic that we all recently experienced. Technological advances have shortened distances in time. In consequence, whatever happens on one side of the world affects the other side almost immediately. As part of a global community, we are constantly challenged to deal with situations that may cause fear, uncertainty, or other concerns that adds up to our daily burdens. Most times, we are unprepared to control our emotions and sentiments, and even without noticing, these situations impact our mental and physical health. As the level of stress becomes higher than what the individual can handle, and if there are no supporting systems, despair, hopelessness set in, leading to depression and, in the worst case scenario, suicide. A report from the CDC published in August 2023 states that suicide is one of the leading causes in the US. A total of 48,183 individuals died by suicide in 2021. On average, one person in the US dies from suicide about every 11 minutes. Suicidal people are crying for help, for support, for someone who cares. Evidence from scientific research has shown that the rate of suicide is lower in individuals who declare themselves religious or spiritual, who have some sort of faith. This result may derive from the fact that individuals who believe in a superior power find support in their faith and or in their spiritual group to resist suicidal ideations. However, understanding that life and tribulations do not end with death of the body plays an essential role in this decisive moment. Spiritism, explaining the spirit life, the law of cause and effect, reincarnation as a learning process for evolution, clarifies, educates, and gives support, providing hope and consolation. Spiritism helps to understand the causes of suffering and provides the resources to find strength, courage, and confidence. The United States Spiritist Medical Association, or SMA-US, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that gives voice to scientists, healthcare professionals to communicate their knowledge and experience in spirituality applied to health. Based on the principles of Spiritism, the SMA-US brings science and spirituality together with the mission to educate healthcare professionals and support research on the impact of the spirit soul in physical and mental health. A number of recognized professionals have presented lectures and participated in scientific discussions, including Dr. Harold Koenig, Dr. Christina Pacholski, Dr. David Rosmarin, just to mention a few. The SMA-US also participates in events with the International Spiritist Medical Association, presenting international speakers such as Dr. Peter Fenwick, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, Dr. Alexander Moreda Almeida, and Dr. Elaine Drisdale, and others. During the first semester of this year, the SMA-US presented a series of lectures by psychiatrists and researchers on spirituality in mental health, and is planning to present a live Q&A on this topic at the end of the year. The SMA-US is now a subscriber of the Religion, Spirituality, and Health Scientific Interest Group of the National Institutes of Health, and announces its events through their mailing list to the scientific community interested in spirituality and health. Support the SMA-US by becoming a member by going to www.sma-us.org. Present a live Q&A on this topic at the end of the year. The SMA-US is now a subscriber of the Religion, Spirituality, and Health Scientific Interest Group of the National Institutes of Health, and announces its events through their mailing lists to the scientific community interested in spirituality and support the SMA US by becoming a member by going to www.sma-us.org.
All right, now I have a message particularly focused here on those that are local here to Portland, Hillsborough, Vancouver, Clackamas, in the area. If the message you're listening to here is resonating with you, if it's helping you breathe better, if you think you need help, if you think you can help others, there is a center here local to the area, about 20 minutes from here. There is a flyer just like this, all around there if you want to get the flyer. There's also a number of members of that center. If you're listening to me, if you don't mind raising your hands so people know where you are. There's some, they look very much like the volunteers that raised their hands earlier today. So if you want to go talk to them and meet them, please go ahead and do that. Obviously, if you're not local, if you want to visit as well, they would love to welcome you no matter what, and it'd be great to have you all there and visit you. So now going on with our program, it is my pleasure to welcome back to stage Dr. Anahy Fonseca, that came all the way from Brazil to share her expertise with us. As we get ready for that, and as she comes to join us here on stage, once again, don't forget to prepare your questions, right? So send the questions, put on the papers, go online if you are online. And Dr. Anahy is going to be talking to us now about integrating spirituality and healthcare. With you, Dr. Fonseca.
So I think this is okay, the sound. I think I should put then my spiritual glasses. We are learning with each other, right? So, and let's see if I got it right. So it was a beautiful presentation from MA USA. And let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's see. Okay. But my spiritual glasses, it's too far away, so I'll have to turn. So we've talked a lot today about Joanna de Angelis and the spiritual path to mental health. And I'll bring to you now a little bit of in the medical field, okay? That how we researched that in the past 30, 40 years. I saw Alexander there. He's one of the main Brazilian psychiatrists that are studying and researching about spirituality and religion and mental health. I myself are part of the special interest group in the Brazilian Psychiatry Association and also in the World Psychiatry Association. So it's interesting for us to notice some concepts. You see here, health, and it's all the concept of health and mental health, okay? It's from the World Health Association. So from 1998, the World Health Association already states that mental health is a dynamic state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So spirituality appears in the concept from 1998 on. And mental health that we have been discussing today. So the state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her capabilities
can cope with the normal stresses of life productively and fruitfully and contribute to the community in which he or she lives. This is from 2001 on, okay? So the state of well-being. So we are talking about well-being. And pathos, you know, as pathological, that we talk a lot here in the West. So it comes from the Greek word, I can't pronounce it. I don't know if any one of you knows Greek, but that it means suffering or experience. A Greek word that means passivity, suffering, feeling, or illness. And it was Descartes that connected it with the suffering thing. So when we are saying, what's your pathology, not your diagnosis, right? So we're pathologizing, right? The suffering. And as we have been talking here previously, so suffering is something that we are all going to go through at some point, especially because the ego is trying to adapt. And here we live, now we can say, one of the crises of humanity to evolve. But you know, people, Jung says that without crisis, there is no development of consciousness, without some sort of crisis. And Jussara was talking to us now in the beginning of the day, remembering that in Jung's house there was the cross, and about the archetype, we couldn't talk much about the archetype, so ancient forms in our psyche that already have these images that our suffering here, right? But it's a suffering not without a sense or a purpose. It is a suffering to evolve, to develop consciousness, okay? This is very important. So when Descartes connected pathos, that means also suffering, not only illness and feeling, you see here, and passivity, but it's not a passivity that we can't do anything about it. It's a passivity in terms of acceptance, in psychological terms. So there's many more meanings to pathos than only illness. And we have from Descartes' own associated, and we say medical field, pathology, right? So, okay, so you know that pathos is not only about illness. That's why I wanted to bring the etiology of the word. So, and what about healing? The process of becoming well again, especially after a cut or other injury, this is in the dictionary, or of making someone well again, like we do in the Spiritist centers, talking to people. The process in which a bad situation or painful emotion ends or improves. It's another way to see it. And what about wholeness, that we talk about holistic concepts, right? Even in medical field, we're talking about that. So the state of forming a complete and harmonious whole, unity, the state of being unbroken or undamaged. So we work pretty much in these days in medical field, the state of being unbroken or undamaged. But I wanted you to bring the dictionary meanings, because it's the first one is the state of forming a complete and harmonious whole and unity. So we are talking about, when we talk about wholeness from the point of view of psychology, we are talking about what we were discussing in the morning. That is the interconnection of everything within us and outside of us. And this interconnection, this perception of the interconnection among everything that is here in this universe, in this time and place, this is spirituality. This is integration. This is growth, evolution, right? So that's why I also wanted to bring you this concept. So I love this guy, Andrew Powell. He has The Ways of the Soul is the name of his book. He's a psychiatrist from England, from the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And he's one of the psychiatrists that founded the first special interest group in psychiatry, spirituality, religion, and psychiatry in the world. It started in England in the Royal College of Psychiatry. You can check and see the special interest group. And Andrew Powell says in his book, despite strong research, I brought some for you, strong research evidence that spirituality and health are positively correlated. Spirituality, this is in the research from the last decades, spirituality has been considered within conventional medicine as irrelevant to the work of the healthcare team. This also occurs in psychiatry because religious and spiritual themes, since Freud, began to be identified with illnesses and seen through the lens of pathology. Okay, this is very important. So initiatives as Dr. Marlene Nobre, that you all know from Brazil, they're a very good friend of Chico Xavier. She developed her mediumship with Chico, and she created the Brazilian Medical Spiritist Association, the first one, AMI Brazil. And then from now on, the International Medical Spiritist Medical Association, and from now on, then a lot of us started, wow, there's something here. So let's study about that. So that's why the movie here that you passed before my talk is so important for us. This initiative is so important. And we say in the medical field that medicine is changing, not exactly because of the doctors. I'm sorry about my colleagues, but that's what's going on. It's changing because of the patients. It's changing because each one of you, when you go and and talk to your your doctors, and tell them about your spiritual experiences, and tell them about your dreams, about your religiosity, about your spirituality, you are all helping the medical field develop. There's a research that say, international one, that 70% of the patients want the doctor, their personal doctor, to talk about them, about religious and spirituality. And only 30% of the doctors feel okay to talk with the patients about that. So we need very much the patients coming forward and telling their doctors, well, I would like to talk about my beliefs and faiths. I think this helps with my health, because this helps medicine also, okay? So in the previous movie, you saw Dr. Harold Canning. He has been in Brazil also. We are all friends, and you watch each other's research and things like that. And Duke University Medical Center is one of the greatest centers here in US that research spirituality, religion, and health, okay? And Dr. Canning has made a review, a systematic review from 1872 to 2010 of all quantitative research published in peer-reviewed academic journals in the English language, listed in the main database, okay? This is a beautiful research and work that he and his team have done. And he has published the first handbook of religion and health, Oxford University Press, in 2001, and the second in 2012. And it's a brief summary, so I won't tire you. But religiosity and spirituality, they say in his handbook, it can be a powerful coping resource, as we have been discussing here. It is related to better mental health and healthier behaviors. It is related to better physical health, better medical health, medical and surgical outcomes, and greater longevity. And all, you know, that for research's purpose, we have to duplicate, we have to be able to duplicate the research. And they are showing the same results, okay? So I just wanted to bring you this concept so that you can talk in the scientific field, we can talk with academics, you can talk to whoever you want, because we have our own for instance, in Spiritism, our own definitions. And we were talking about Joanna de Angelis and her work and psychology, but for research purposes in academia. So we separate religion and spirituality. And religion, it's an organized, like Kenning and his team started, and now all of us use. So religion is an organized system of beliefs, practices, rituals, and symbols designed to assist the individual's proximity to the sacred and or transcendent. And spirituality in the medical field is viewed as personal research for answers about the meaning of life and the relationship with the sacred or transcendent. Okay? And so Koenig says that spirituality is a popular expression currently preferred over religion, because we say that many people have and call themselves a spiritual person, but not a religious one. So I know that all of you know that. And it is considered personal, defined by the individual. It is generally free from rules and responsibilities associated with religion. A person can be spiritual but not religious. It is seen as common to everyone. It is especially useful in a clinical setting. However, because it is very subjective, it is difficult to measure and quantify. Because, you know, as I told you previously, it's medicine based on evidence. So we need to do research in medicine. And we need to quantify, to have variables that we can compare. So they say that spirituality is we can measure, let's say, and have some instruments in the medical field to measure, like in asking people questions. But in evaluating, actually, the spirituality of a person, if it's more developed or whatever. But it is difficult to, as a variable in research, to compare, okay, use as a variable. So we use much more religion, for instance, church or temple attendance. I'm quite sure you know that. And it's said that, for instance, if a person go, let's say, to the Spiritist center or church or whatever, but from the person's religion, and practice like once or twice a week, it has the evidence are very strong that the person is more, it's healthier. The person is healthier. And if the person gets sick, for instance, the person recovers quicker. Okay, so these are kind of evidence that research are showing. And what about religiosity? So it is the extent to which an individual believes, follows, and practices a religion. It can be organizational, participation in church or religious temple, or non-organizational, praying, reading books, watching religious programs, and so on, or both of them. But I wanted to bring you that because there is a difference. When we say, and I'm quite sure that all of you, even in Spiritism, have sometimes difficulty explaining to people that are not Spiritists, oh, but you are Christians, right? So you are kind of fanatic or something like that, right? I know from your smile. So that people don't know this difference between intrinsic religion and extrinsic. okay? So we separate to study how religion affects the person and also the outcome of diseases. And intrinsic religion has a central place in the individual's life. I can tell you that Spiritists usually have intrinsic religion, okay? It is the greatest good. Other needs are seen as secondary, of lesser importance, and as far as possible are placed in harmony with their religious belief and orientation. Having accepted a religion, the individual seeks to internalize, this is a psychological term, internalize it and follow it fully. This variable, religiosity, so intrinsic religiosity, is associated in researches with positive outcomes in clinical studies. This is the religiosity that we see in Spiritism. But fanaticism, extrinsic religiosity, okay? It is a means used to obtain other ends, such as consolation, sociability, this is okay, distraction, but status, this is not okay in psychological terms, and not okay distraction too. So religion is accepted superficially or is adapted to meet the individual's needs and personal goals. This would be very Freudian. That was what was Freudian talking about, okay? When he called religiosity actually one of the mechanisms of defense of the ego, reactive formation. You know that some of you that are studying Joana de Angelis, she talks about the mechanism of defense. One of them, reactive formation. So this would be extrinsic religiosity adapted to meet the individual's needs and personal goals in a sense of his persona and the likes in social media. Then here we have fanaticism, okay? And this variable is associated with negative health outcomes. So if I believe that God is punishing me, if I believe that my disease, my illness is a punishment from God, if I feel guilty about, then we will have negative health outcomes, okay? And even mortality, the rates of mortality increase. Well, then, that's very important that religious spiritual coping, as we call in the medical field and in psychiatry, is the way that people use their religiosity and spirituality to deal with stressful situations and difficulties in their lives. So today we have been talking about religious spiritual coping from the point of view of the medical field, okay? But as you see, negative religious spiritual coping, we were talking about positive religious spiritual coping, that it's what Joana de Angelis' teachings and the Spiritist knowledge tell us about. But there is also negative religious spiritual coping. In empirical studies, they have been linked, these forms of coping, with depression and anxiety and increased risk of death. As I was telling you, this is from Canning's handbook. Why, people? Because it's extrinsic religiosity, okay? And then it makes a negative religious spiritual coping because I will believe I'm not thinking about my spirituality. I'm not developing it inside of me. I'm not thinking about the concepts. I'm thinking to please whatever religious leader in my community. I think that I'm thinking about, and I'm going to the temple, the center, or the church because I want people to like me, but I don't even pay attention of the sacredness of the text. I don't reflect upon them. And then when I get ill, then I will think that God is punishing me. I will think that it's something really bad that I did. I have no hope. Well, we have an increased risk of death. Of course, it's everything connected. So the religious and spiritual dimensions of the culture are among the most important factors that structure the human experience and patterns of health, illness, and death. And for most people, religion and spirituality are more of a source of support and well-being than a psychopathological manifestation. This is very, very important. And negative views of religion and spirituality do not hold up in light of recent studies, which found no independent association between spirituality and psychopathology, as medical personnel thought in the past, and still many of them think in the present. That's why we need the researchers, and we need, to talk about that. So why should the clinician address the patient's spirituality? Because beliefs can help patients deal with aspects of their life. Religious activity and beliefs are related to better health and quality of life. Studies show that most patients would like their doctors, as I was telling you, to talk about their religion and spirituality, and reported that they would feel more empathy and trust in the doctor who questioned this topic. An integral and more humanized vision that we are unfortunately losing in many countries in the medical field. This is Ken Parkman from 2012. He has been in Brazil in the first global meeting of spirituality, religion, and mental health that Alexander and I did we were able to put together in one Brazilian Association Psychiatric Congress. So religion and spirituality, they reinforce understanding by offering hope, value, meaning, and purpose. They facilitate integration and social support by linking religious patients with specific forms of community care. They provide systems of meaning and existential coherence. This is very, very important for mental health, as we have been talking. Other possible explanations of how religion can affect health: respect for the body, advocated by many religions, including our friend Dan was talking about Spiritism, generating better nutrition and lifestyle habits, optimization of psychoneuroimmunological, psychoneuroendocrine, and psychophysiological pathways. I just put it here for you to know that even in our body, physiology of our body, we are seeing the effects of a developed spirituality and religiosity in a patient. Better coping and stress reduction strategy, better psychological state by bringing hope, forgiveness, altruism, and love. And approaching religiosity and spirituality, and I think this can be useful, but Spiritists usually know that already by all of Kardec's and all the great spirits' writings, in a natural and peaceful way. How does the patient, so questions how does the patient live with the disease? What is the meaning of the disease in his or her life? What cultural beliefs may impact his or her treatment? And use suitable instruments if you are in the medical field. There are a lot of instruments, questionnaires. I wanted to bring you here, guys, because about this wonderful project at Harvard Medical School that is integrating knowledge across disciplines. The name is the Human Flourishing Program, okay? It's a beautiful program that aims to bring together various academic disciplines across the university together on important questions. So it's interdisciplinary program. And I'm not going to go through all this, but I do think you should all Google it, okay? And take a look. because it's a beautiful program. Some of Brazilians researchers have already been there. I just don't want to go too much on that. But the thing is that the program is oriented around the question, how may religion and spirituality in concert with public health and the practice of medicine alleviate illness and promote human well-being? I think they need Joana de Angelis there. What do you think? Right? We'll get there, I'm quite sure. So I brought a little bit of Carl Gustav Jung. This is Jung, okay? Today's psychological problem is a spiritual problem. And Jung was saying this in the 1950s, 1960s. A religious problem. Man is hungry and thirsty for a secure relationship with the psychic forces within himself. So pathways, spiritual pathways to mental balance, right? Authentic religiosity, authentic, is the best medicine for all psychological suffering. For psychoneurosis, ultimately, is the suffering of a soul that has not found its meaning. I love this sentence. I love it. I wanted to bring to you because I think this is a summary of what we have been talking today. Okay? And I brought this sentence by Leonardo. Both in Brazil, he is one of the guys, the religious people, that translated Jung to Portuguese. And Leonardo both said the rescue of the spiritual dimension is urgent. We need to rescue spirituality, that is non-material values, the feeling of belonging, see them, we were talking about, to something greater, and the perception that things are connected to each other, and that this guiding thread that unites everything in the cosmos is the name that religions gave to that mystery that we call God, which is not outside of us, but within us in our depth. I think it's a beautiful sentence. And then we have Allan Kardec that we have talked a lot, but I wanted very much to bring you this. If the feeling of the existence of a supreme being were nothing more than the product of a teaching, it would not be universal, and it would not exist like the notions of science, except in those who could have received this teaching. So that's a beautiful sentence by Allan Kardec. And I brought you some comics, right? So we can have some fun with ourselves and our difficulty. God, where are you? Well, I'm up here. And also this comic that I love, I think young and teenagers and young medical personnel are reading a lot, the Heart and the Brain. I'm going to bed, wake me when the world is fixed, the heart says. And the brain says, sorry, heart, the world needs you. So thank you. And before I go, I have 4 minutes, so I left some minutes. That's why I'm rushing here to read to you. I made a summary because it's a beautiful prayer by John Henry Newman from the 19th century. So we were talking about darkness. My colleagues previously were talking about also the crisis. And I wanted very much to, I love this prayer. It's just a summary. So lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom. Let thou me on. The night is dark and I'm far away from home. Let thou me on. So long thy power has blessed me. Sure it still will lead me on. Until the night is gone, and with the morning those angels' faces smile, which I have loved long since and lost a while. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anahy. Now it's time for a little break. So we're gonna have a coffee break. Don't forget to check out our books. Still we have the 25% discount, but ends when the symposium ends. So hurry up, get those books, and we will be back at 3:50. Okay, enjoy your break.
Here. So we were saying about it is time to go and connect and get to know people. And from what I saw outside, there was a lot of connecting happening. So well done. All right, we're back into the program. A couple more hours to go here. And during the day, we've been asking you to submit questions. Thank you for doing that, both you here as well as online. And now we're going to have a chance to go through some of those questions, another round of Q&A. So I'd like to invite you, João Korngold, to join us here. And while I'm introducing João, I also want to come back into the stage here. Dan Assisi, Suzana Simoes, Andreia, Marshall-Netto, Kirsten, DeMelo, and Anahy Fonseca. So welcome back. And João Korngold is a co-founder and director of both the Spiritist Group of New York and the Spiritist Alliance for Books. With his extensive involvement in the U.S. Spiritist movement, he has played a crucial role in leading mediumship meetings and has been a dedicated speaker and leading Spiritist study groups. So now with you, the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. It has been a very enlightened day with a lot of learning experiences. Thank you for the questions that you sent. So let us start in order, right, of the presenter. So the first one goes to Dan. Dan, due to the sufferings of life, one can easily become indifferent. How can Spiritism help this difficult feeling?
Hello, everyone. First of all, let me just say how exciting it is to have an opportunity to do questions and answers. Spiritism started with questions and answers. It's all about questions and answers. It's in our DNA. Inquiry is in the DNA, Spiritism. So that's a wonderful question and a very practical one too. I can see why we would sometimes desensitize ourselves to the suffering in the world, because it's a coping mechanism sometimes. There's so much happening that I can see why we would say, I'm not going to pay attention to that. So I understand that, but I would urge all of us to not let ourselves slide into a point where we are indifferent to other people's suffering, because we don't want people to be indifferent to us either. I also understand that sometimes we may feel a certain sense of helplessness about what is it that we can do today. I'll give you an example to try to make it more personal. Today, as we were walking here from the hotel, we saw a lot of our unhoused neighbors living in the streets. And that's a problem that we see growing in many different parts of the world, including my hometown, or at least my town now, San Diego. And I have grappled and wrestled with that because I don't know what I can do to help end homelessness. But I do know that I can at least acknowledge and smile and say hello. I can offer that which I have in that moment, even if it's not enough to solve the problem long term. I can just be there for that moment. Is it enough? For that moment, for me, it is, because I can't do anything else. So I fight the feeling of I am not going to look at our friends. I'm not going to think about it because the problem is so big that I can't tackle it. It's okay to wrestle with a challenge. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we do it in a way that it doesn't handicap us forever, right? Like, we don't want to spiral into worrying about a problem so much that we can't go about our daily lives. So finding that medium, finding that balance between being empathic and caring and leading us to some sort of action is very important. So I would suggest that we should not just brush it under the carpet, whatever it is. Because the truth is, tomorrow it could be us, it could be somebody we care. And that person that's going to whatever challenge you're facing, it's somebody's children, right? They have a mother and a father who cares for them. And even a Buddhist practice of thinking about it that way is saying, like, what if you were their mom? What would you do? So I think empathy is a very powerful tool. I invite us to bring that into our lives and understand that even if we can't find a final solution to the problem, we can at least offer that which we have at that moment. And maybe maybe we can still try to figure how to help people afterwards and offer prayers and offer help and lend a hand. But try to fight that feeling of indifference, because that's really dangerous territory for the soul, right? In the moment that we're indifferent to everything else, we're disconnected. And that it probably does not bode well for our own mental health and emotional health in the long term, because no man is an island, as the poet would say, right? No person is an island. So let's try to fight that and remember that we're all connected. If we go back to our spirituality and to our sense of immortality and community, and then it becomes easier for us to remember that we're just in different sides of a situation, but being present and being kind is at least a start. That's how I would face that.
Thanks, Dan. So, Andreia, second. How can we go on and not sin anymore when we do not know how to do it better?
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. Thank you.
You want?
First and foremost, I just wanted to say thanks for the IT guys that are responsible for the transmission. People are watching at home, and it's because of them. So thank you for the beautiful work they're doing. The best way that we can explain, and just for those that are watching, the sin is such a harsh word, right? It brings back a lot of memories that perhaps was one of the reasons that it led us away from religiousness, as Dr. Anahy was talking about the difference between the words. To sin means to miss the mark. That's what it means, to make it lighter and easier to comprehend. And that's something that we do almost every day, whether in action or thought. We are not always crispy clean, right? It's something that we still deal with. It's something that it's still hard for us to rid ourselves of. Because as we were talking about reincarnation, the experiences that we have had as immortal spirits, it's the sum of all that we have been through and have walked through, but we still have to do a little more to reach plenitude, and that's the truth. But St. Augustine comes to our rescue. In the Gospel According to Spiritism, in the Spirit's book, he will tell us about the way that we can actually lead better lives, seeking harmony and balance. And he would say, do as I do, as I did when I was alive. At the end of each day, I would do an assessment, a daily assessment of my actions. And whatever it is that we realized wasn't so great, we would reflect upon it, and the next day try to do better. And that's what we should do. It is not always easy, because we might leave the Spiritist Center feeling very whole and very happy, and then somebody cuts in front of us in traffic and we get irritated, right away. That feeling that we have held for so long through different incarnations comes up, flares up, and that's quite okay. One of the things that we must realize, or better yet, I wouldn't say must, but perhaps we should realize, is what Joanna de Angelis talks about in being awake. We are no longer spirits that are asleep. We are already awake. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here on a Saturday afternoon listening to different speakers and seeking knowledge with Spiritism, this beautiful body of knowledge that we have before us. So we are awake already. We are no longer somnambulists. We're no longer walking along our lives asleep. We are pretty much aware. We are conscious already. And because of that, it talks about a level of spiritual maturity. And in doing so, we won't punish ourselves and we realize that we have made a mistake. And then we will seek daily, strive daily to work on the knots of things that still live behind. A big one is forgiveness. Anybody here have issues with other people? Right? But what do we do when we understand that the greatest charity that we can do is benevolence, indulgence, and forgiveness, as explained by Christ, the beep, right? Benevolence towards everyone, indulgence towards the forgiveness of others, and forgiveness for the offenses. Forgiveness is something that we seek from others. So perhaps this is one of the things that has led us to walk astray for many, many experiences and different lives, which is why often we are brought on that same life along with others that we have erred with in the past or sinned with in the past. And so reincarnation gives an opportunity to do better, to do it again. As spiritists, as reincarnationist spirits that we are, we understand that life is giving us an opportunity to go and sin no more, so that the illnesses that we have brought on ourselves do not keep on dragging and making us feel so miserable, because it does. And if you haven't been able to forgive someone, you know that that's one of the things that cause a lot of suffering. It's so great. I was talking to my husband one night. I like to do like 2 a.m. He loves it. I'll wake him up with a question, just wondering about that. And he's like, just open the Spirit's book. It's there, I'm sleepy right now. Yeah, that's him. He's so patient with me. How wonderful it is to not feel imprisoned by the shackles of being unable to forgive someone, which doesn't mean that we love them immediately. But then, do we already do the exercise of loving one's enemy, right? Are we able to not put barriers for communication, for reconciliation? Are we able to wish other people well, right? Like, oh, I don't want to deal with them right now, but I don't wish anything bad upon them. That's the Christian spiritist awareness, conscious way of living. So my suggestion would, going back to the beginning of the answer, do as St. Augustine would do at the end of each day, make an assessment of the actions and strive better to do it daily, or strive daily to do it better.
The others are the same, right? Yes. Kirsten, you can hold the microphone. It's for you.
Are you sure you don't want to do a Suzana or Anahy?
You got to ask if it's an easy one and a hard
Oh, is
one.
it?
If it's a hard one, you pass.
Yeah, it's getting easier. No,
Okay.
it's not, but it's good for you. I like that question for you. How do we show our vulnerability when the world tells us that to be vulnerable is to be weak?
Channel your inner Renee. Channel your inner Renee. Yeah. Perfect.
We have to live our truth. It's as simple and as difficult as that. We can attempt to try and be something that we are not, try to live accordingly, check back and see how you feel after that. But that's why a lot of us are in so much of this inner struggle, because we live this duality of who we are, who we really are, who we present to the world. But until each one of us is able to be authentically who we are, to be able to sit in our shame, in our darkness, in our shadows, and come to know it, we can't truly come to the light. So how you do it? My suggestion, because I have about 5 more seconds, is to pray about it and ask for your own personal guidance, because for each one of us, it's very unique. It's very different. What looks like vulnerability to you may not necessarily look the same to me. And that's okay. And it's so interesting because right before we came up to stage, a little interaction happened. A mistake was made. And the person who experienced the mistake was so tangibly embarrassed. And Suzana, what did you and I say? Sit in the shame. It's okay. It's okay. So also, me being my best version of myself, living what I believe, is the best thing I can do. Because then others would get inspired. Just like many people have become very inspired by Dr. Brené Brown's work on shame and vulnerability, created a ripple effect. That's all.
Thanks. Suzana. So how do mental health practitioners can assist clients in directly connecting with and receiving healing and guidance from helping spirits? You want me to read again?
Sure.
Yes. So I'll give you 5 seconds more to think. How can mental health practitioners assist clients in directly connecting with and receiving healing and guidance from helping spirits?
Okay, so the mental health practitioner has to have some belief in spirituality. That's me processing the question. And then wants to guide the patient or the client to connect with the spirits. Is that what is being asked?
Exactly that.
I think that, well, first of all, the client needs to be open to the idea of spirituality and the existence of another dimension. But if the client is, then I always think that the best path to connection is connection to oneself. If you connect to yourself, if the mental health practitioner is able to facilitate connection with the self in first place, restoring a sense of integrity, of dignity, then the person might be able to, because when we are in a state of confusion or mental health illness, any issues, a lot of times we lose perspective. We're in a very narrow place. We can't see beyond. So I would say that the first step would be to facilitate this integration and connection with the self. Once you restore that sense of dignity and connection, you can say, start to introduce perhaps the idea that there is something else to connect to, both outside and within you. So I'm not sure if it's a very broad question, I think.
Don't kill the messenger.
And who is this healthcare practitioner? Who is the client? I mean, it's so broad, and it would depend a lot on the healthcare practitioner, on the case. What is the case, right? So, but I truly believe that connecting with yourself is connecting with the divine, is connecting with God within, and that opens every time that we promote this healing, it opens opportunities for connections beyond yourself and better quality of connections with everyone, your neighbors, incarnate and discarnate. The rest, it's very personal. The person needs to be open to listen. Healthcare practitioners need to be mindful and respectful of the moment. One of the greatest qualities of healthcare practitioner, I'm not one, but I have been in therapy for many years in analysis, and the good healthcare practitioner respects the time of the patient and walks with the patient together side by side in the patient's pace. And so having had this experience, which I want to say was one of the best experience of my life. And I want to say this too, since I have the microphone and the lights, we spend so much money and so much of our resources with the things that will not provide us what we need and the treasures that we are going to take with us once we leave this world. Our mental health is worth it. It is probably most likely the very best investment that I did in my life, because you're investing in the mortal spirit. And it is the type of treasures, it is the best inheritance that we can pass on to our children, that we can help the new generation. Sometimes we ask, how can we help the world, right? How can we help our children? The answer is you got to invest in yourself, on your own mental health. So please do so. And sorry if I didn't answer the question, because I don't think there is an actual answer for the question.
I think that answers, you.
Good, maybe.
Yes, no, but what you did was that you, in the beginning, you moved around without finding the direction. Suddenly you found the direction and you went through it, which was
Good.
beautiful.
I thank the good spirits for that.
So, Dr. Fonseca, should we be suspicious of alternative medical practices, expansion of medical reach? There are so many out there. How do I identify the good from the bad?
Wow, I like the questions. They're challenging.
Yeah, not simple questions.
Yeah, not simple ones. Well, maybe it's kind of the questions that a question that was proposed to Suzana. But what I can say that, for instance, in Brazil, we have a national health system. Okay, so anyone can go to a hospital, even foreigners, and will be seen and taken care of. But of course, this would be great if all the treatments were available, which they are not, but the basic ones, yes. But to this day, there's something interesting that happened. They started accepting, I wouldn't call alternative medicine, but we call complementary medicine, okay? There are things like healing, imposing of the hands. There are things like mindfulness that I was talking about. So I think a better term would be complementary medicine, not alternative. But I know there are lots of what we call alternative medicine. I would, maybe this question would join all of the others, because Andreia talked about being awake. So if we believe in the spirit and the immortality of the spirit, and if we believe in reincarnation, I think we are pretty much awake. And so I would say that, and together with what Suzana and Dan and all the others were talking about, I think it's a personal thing that I just came to my mind. A spiritual leader was asked, what is the best religion? And the answer was the one that makes you better, a better person. So I would go in this direction and say what's the best treatment, the one that really works for you. If we are talking about alternative or complementary medicine, it has to be, there's no other way, because what we say in the medical field is that a treatment is only considered in medicine if it has gone through all researches and decades of follow-up, controlling to see if the person really gets the health that the treatment is supposed to give during many years. We call the follow-up. So alternative medicine doesn't have to this day this kind of research, this kind of follow-up. So many times, at least in Brazil and some parts of the United States, in Europe, from what I understand. So what happens that we need more research, we need to discuss more, and people that go to alternative medicine they will have to count on their own criteria, because if it's not gone through the regular paths of what we call science, that I think it's changing, thanks God, and Dr. Marlena Nobre and all the people that came before us, because they open paths. We are talking about a new paradigm of in medicine also, that is the spiritual paradigm coming in the focus of all the scientists and all the researchers. But one data that could be interesting for you, I don't know, here in the United States, I understand, for instance, that there exists regularly past lives therapy, that it's okay. But for instance, in Brazil, if I am a medical person, I cannot do past lives therapy. I can do if it's for research purposes, but I cannot do professionally and be paid for that. Why? Because it's not scientifically proved yet. So I can only tell that for the person that asked, and for all of you that are hearing, I prefer the term complementary medicine, because then if things like Spiritist knowledge brings us, we all know the imposing of hands, the water, the fluidification of the water. I love what Chico Xavier, I think it was Emmanuel, I think, or Andrea Luiz, I'm not quite sure, maybe you guys can help me, but about the water, if you are stressed, if you want to say something, then the medicine peace water. I love that. So I would say it's complementary medicine, peace water, right? Just put in your mouth, don't swallow, and wait to calm down to see if we're going to do something with that. So there are lots of things to be discovered in medicine field, and I think we are doing, all this in the Spiritist movement. We are reaching the point that we know more about, and then science is changing. And so I would say your own criteria, and use what Andrea said, your awakened state. Trust within yourself and what's best for you, what feels right. That I would say that.
Thank you. Very good.
I'm just going to jump in here really quick.
Absolutely.
For those of you who may not be familiar with peace water, it is the idea of putting water in your mouth and not saying what you really mean when somebody is talking to you about things you don't like, right? It's very peaceful, right? Put a little bit of water in your mouth. Hold it, wait 10 minutes or 20 days or 30 years, depends on who you're with.
And then don't swallow.
And then don't swallow. And peace water, there it is.
Thank you. So then, back to you. How does the planetary transition and spiritual and mental health are related?
Ooh, I like that one. How many minutes we got?
There.
All right, now, so let's just give some context really quickly. Within Spiritism, we sometimes use this term called planetary transition. And what we mean by that is everything else in nature evolves. We are evolving, we are growing. Our planet is also evolving. We are also graduating from a phase and going to a next one. But in every evolution, there are key moments that are important for us. There are like formative moments. There are moments that really help us transition to a new level of maturity. And we believe, given everything else that we have seen and the messages we have received for decades now, even hundreds of years, depending on how you look at it, that we are in such an inflection point in our spiritual collective history. We call that planetary transition. We are changing. Our planet is growing. It is evolving. So when this happens in this moment now, we are taking a lot of things at once because we need to move on. And so it makes sense that during these difficult times, these times of growth, we have an influx of challenges that are created for a variety of reasons that we should talk about some other time, right? But it makes sense then that as we are going through this process, that we are going to be exposed to a lot of challenges because we have to overcome them because we need to grow up. So that is the why we are going through all the things we are going in the world right now. We talked a lot today about what is going on and what do we do with it. But this is sort of a context of why does the world seem so harsh right now? It's because a lot of us who still need to do a little spiritual growing up to do, right, are here now and we are exercising our experiences and our things that sometimes are not the healthiest of choices to be able to move along with this planet. So spiritual planetary transition has everything to do with the moment that we're living in because it explains to us why we have so many different things going on. We're all in this key moment of our own personal evolutionary lives, but also of the planet's. And we have sort of like, for lack of a better term, a test. We're in school and we need to graduate from 6th grade to 7th grade. And it's rough right now, but we are all going to do it together. So it makes sense that during these difficult times, we may feel an extra sense of urgency, of confusion, because all of us are trying to figure this stuff out at once. And that's why the world is so tough. So when we think about mental health, we absolutely think about being okay with who we are, but we also have to understand that we are immersed in a collective content, right? So we are in this fishbowl called Earth, and everybody else is going through their own stuff. So now we have to deal with our stuff, but also get the vibes of the people next to us, which makes it hard, right? It's hard for you to be upbeat when there are a lot of negative people around you. And it's also hard for you to be negative when there's a lot of happy people around you. It's quite annoying. Sometimes I want to be negative and people are so cheerful, right? It's frustrating, but you get my point. So we understand that this is the reason why we are seeing so many difficult challenges and different events out there, because we're all going through this natural evolutionary process that can be explained through reincarnation and the natural evolutionary path to things. And we are just very fortunate to be able to live in this moment in time, because it means that we can give a wonderful contribution to the betterment of our world, not only of ourselves, but of the world in general. So some people can say like, did I really have to be born in this moment in time? So hard. But we should also put our glasses on and say, we have asked to be here because we can give something back. We can help the world move along. So mental health, definitely an important component. Planetary transition definitely explains why mental health is such important now and why things are so tough.
Thank you. Andreia, back to you. You spoke about Jesus, right? How can we talk about Jesus without alienating those that have religious preconceptions and problems with Jesus' figure?
By applying the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd wish them to do unto you. That is a universal law that can be applied to anybody who is not even religious, because if you consider the phrase in itself and you start to ponder about this, you do. Would I wish unto Kirsten something that I wouldn't wish upon myself, right? And vice versa. Would I wish upon her something that I would wish for myself? So we see a lot of hesitancy at times with Jesus when we participate in mediumistic meetings or spirit rescue meeting, depending on how you come to know of it. Spirits that have had a really negative experience with Christ per se, because of what they might have suffered in a previous life, right? So the angle is quite hard because you don't want to alienate, you don't want to offend. It's one of the very common questions that people, ask. Isn't it a little pretentious when Jesus says, "I am the way, and nobody can go through to God unless through me"? And of course, it's about the teachings, it's about the lessons, it's about pretty much what he has brought, and it's uncontestable. And that's one of the things. When we look at the gospel according to Spiritism, and Marcelo said, "Don't take the phone." I'm like, I'm going to take the phone in case I have to cheat. But it's right there in the introduction, right? Where they bring about 5 points in which one is uncontestable. It doesn't matter who you are, what religion you are from, whatever it is the moral content of the message that we have found in the gospel according to Spiritism. So to make it short, because I know we like to get another round of answers, right? I would say applying the golden rule and thinking about it would be a good way to go about it.
Thanks. Kirsten. So a problem that we talked about a lot about suicide today, right? But an equivalent problem that we have in the US nowadays in most of the cities is drug addictions and overdoses, right? How Spiritism can help.
Wow. So many ways, but we have so little time to respond to this question. So I'm going to say that's probably my saving grace. But there's so much that Spiritism can offer. But I will say this. One beautiful thing that Spiritism offers us when we are thinking about our brothers and sisters who have fallen into addiction for a variety of reasons. It's something we were sharing earlier today. One of the things that shocked me, even working in healthcare for 15 years and having worked with addicts for over 10 years and have seen what I think is, I've seen it all. But sometimes when you see, when I came here, we came here to Portland, and I was so struck by this gentleman that I saw on the street yesterday. And of course, my first reaction was horror, because, I hadn't seen that so openly in a public space on the street. But as soon as I thought that, I immediately thought to myself, my God, this could be my son, either one of my sons who are 5 and 3. And I looked at this gentleman who was not old, and I saw my son. And my heart wept because he has parents. He has a mother. This is what Spiritism offers us. Changing our perspective, because how many times have we walked by these individuals and scoffed at them, judged them, used some choice words, even if it's just in our own mind, and say that they are, as many meetings over the years I've attended, hearing government officials use choice words in such individuals, that they are a drain on the healthcare system. But Maya Angelou said something really beautiful, and she might have been quoting somebody else, but she said, until all of us are free, none of us are free. This is what Spiritism has to offer us. change the way we see one another. It will change the way we begin to act. It's a starting point. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzana, on the same.
An easier one this time.
Yes, very easy.
Let's go.
On the same topic, how can Spiritism helps us? We live in a time of a lot of discrimination and prejudices, gender, race, and others. How Spiritism can help us?
Yeah, that's easier. So how can Spiritism help us? Well, Spiritism helps us, as Dan likes to say, when we put those lenses, right, of immortality. One of the ideas that I like to think the most is that Spiritism eliminates what we call nowadays otherization, the other. The other is someone who's always different than me. The other is someone who is often below me. When I see someone as the other, whatever the other might entail and encompass, I distance myself from the other, and I understand that we are different. We usually see someone else as others as a way of protecting ourselves and putting ourselves in a higher place. So Spiritism helps us by teaching us that we are all equal under God, that we might be having different experiences due to our needs, our spiritual needs. But everything that we see and we use to label one another is material. Our biology is material. We are in physical bodies. The same way that the color of our skin is material. So Spiritism helps us to understand that we are in a physical body, but that we are not a physical body. Who are we? We are all children of God with the same potentialities, with the same possibilities. And we are in the present moment. And I love this exercise, which I usually suggest for people to do. Try to imagine yourself outside of the physical body. What is left? Whatever your answer is, that's you. That's you. It has nothing to do with your profession, has nothing to do with your name, with your position, with what you do. It has to do with what you feel. It has to do with your emotions. It has to do with your experiences. It has to do with your learning, your achievements. That's you. It's your unique way to carry all these achievements and relate with someone else. That's you. And whoever you are magnificent, because there's no one else in the entire universe like you. So we learn to look at one another, and that's another exercise, is to, when you are looking at someone else, can you see beyond the eyes? Can you see beyond the physical? Can you relate with that being as a spiritual being? So Spiritism is very powerful in its message and in the invitation that it gives to each one of us to practice that. I wish I could say that I have no prejudice. That's not true. We all carry them. We all have them. So the very first thing that we need to do is to acknowledge our own prejudices and our own difficulties. It's okay. We come from a culture, we come from a number of incarnations. We are under a culture that is constantly telling us what we should do, who we should like, and we still see minorities and majorities. So the first step is to recognize our own prejudices and then keep working on the understanding of who we truly are and practicing. recognizing, be aware of when your own prejudice is playing a role in a relationship. And question yourself, why do I need to see this person as other? What is it that in this person is threatening me, is causing me fear and the need to distance myself? So Spiritism brings a lot of material, but again, the material will go only so far. It needs to find a heart that's open to emotional honesty, emotional analysis, and the willingness to do the work to end any type of prejudice.
Thank you, Suzana. Very good. So our time is up, but before we go, Dr. Fonseca, I'm not going to let you go without talking to us, saying your
thought I was.
final. But
I was free from the question.
I'm going to go easy on you. Just share with us your experience today. You don't know, first time in a Spiritist Symposium. How was it? And, what are you taking from this?
Okay. Well, it has been a pleasure to be here talking about all this, and also a practice, let's say, because just following Suzana's steps and everybody else's. This knowledge, I was talking earlier about the collective unconscious as the transpersonal dimension of the psyche. And it's there, psychologically speaking, that we have the archetypes. We're not going to talk about that, but our common inheritance, spiritual and psychic inheritance as human beings. And I think Joanna uses a lot of Jung because he was almost there. He almost talked about the spirit as our, as Allan Kardec said, the intelligence force of creation, about consciousness, because, as Suzana said, we are children of God. So we are co-creative forces, intelligence. And that's why Jesus says that whatever I do, you can do, and even more. Of course, he was being kind, but okay. So the thing is that to realize that we have all this potential, as Suzana was saying, I think it's very, very important in these times of, as Dan said, of transition. And as Kirsten said also, I saw too the people in the streets, and we saw a lot in Brazil, but when we get to the States, it's kind of strange because you think as, in a first world country, you wouldn't be seeing things like that. But I think one of the things that the pandemic taught us to this day, because there are a lot of common traumas have happened in the past for all of humankind, but into our days, is that there are no really limits. We were all in the same boat, right? So it didn't matter if the person had money or not, was this and that, because the resources were, the medical people didn't know what to do and had to learn and all of that. So we were stressed. We had some control of different parts of our society, in the way that people were saying things, information. We made a little mess of things in the social media and WhatsApp because everybody was stressed. But I think what this symposium means, and it's so, so important, is this realization that doesn't matter, in the worst case scenario that we have in the traumas collective, we don't know what comes in front of us, but we know that precious moments like this, and the way that we can connect, even if with people that are in their homes watching and will be watching later on, to have this understanding that we are really one in the depths of our psyche. So in our spirit, there is no difference because we are children of the source, whatever you call the source, God. So all the potential, as Suzana was saying, is within us. And the capacity to create, and we are beings of light, even if the shadows in some of our brothers and sisters and in ourselves still remain, but we are illuminating them. We are, and Jung says, I'm finished with that. Jung says that the purpose of this life is to kindle, I think we should say, a light in the darkness of the soul. So if here we have, kindled some lights, turn on some lights in our souls, that's good enough. And every achievement, every step on the way that we go further, we can know that we are not alone, because everything that I conquer in terms of the soul and the spirit, I share with all of you. So Dr. Marlene Nobre would say that we shouldn't be personalists, we shouldn't get stuck in our egos and our persona. Why? Because she had the knowledge, growing up with Chico Xavier by her side. I wish I was there, but we all have our guides, so we can be okay with that. We are not alone. So what happens is that every step of the way, every achievement in terms of evolution, we are sharing. And we are sharing our shadows too. But if we integrate them, if we illuminate, if we do, as Kirsten said, that we look to our brothers and sisters, they are suffering, they are kind of lost, momentarily lost, because we are all evolving. And think of them in terms of light, the light that they will be, that there is, even if it's dim, but there is inside of them. And they will, be someday more light. Then we can follow the paths of Jesus. We can, because he was healing us, doing that, kindle lights inside of each one of us. That's why he said, it's not me that did, it's your faith. So let's keep doing this wonderful job.
Thank you. Thank you, Andreia, Kirsten, Dan, Suzana, Dr. Fonseca. Thank you all for the answers, and thank you all for listening to us.
Well, thank you indeed for the panel. Thank you for those of you who sent those questions, the great and very provocative questions. I was thinking to myself, we could probably spend like a whole symposium in each one of those questions, right? And maybe not have enough time. So it's been awesome. Throughout the day, we talked about challenges, and we talked about hope as well. And one thing that always brings us, definitely brings me hope, is when we think about the next generation. So our next session here is another very special one. We're going to have the youth panel. And to moderate the youth panel, I'd like to invite Beatriz Lopes.
I have the pleasure to introduce Beatriz Lopes. Beatriz Lopes has grown up in Spiritism, attending the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center, Danbury in Connecticut. She has been involved in Spiritism by participating in study groups, giving lectures, delivering a speech at the United Nations, and most recently helping to coordinate a youth Spiritist retreat. Today, she'll be moderating the youth panel entitled Youth Perspective on Spirituality and Mental Balance. And to be part of this panel, we ask to come to the stage Gabriel Macedo, Sofia de Oliveira, and Isabela Cabral. Please welcome them.
over there, or should I stand here? Okay, that's fine. That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. So thank you all for being here today. This is really such an amazing event. I'm so excited for these youth to share with you all. So today we'll be having a panel talking about the perspective of youth and what they have to say on mental balance and spirituality. I've been meeting with this incredible group of Spiritist teens to prepare for this event, and I'm so excited for you to see how much incredible knowledge and lived experiences they already have at the ages of 15, 16, and 17. At the beginning of our planning, they had the wonderful idea to reach out to the Spiritist community and ask you all what questions you would like to ask teens on the topic of mental balance. And so, unfortunately, we can't get to every question today, but we put together a good assortment of questions from the public that they're going to be answering for you all. So before we get started, I do want to share a little bit about each of our panelists because, again, at these ages of 15, 16, and 17, they've already accomplished so much. So first up is Sofia de Oliveira. If you want to wave. If you were at the symposium last year, you'll remember Sofia as she is a returning youth panelist. Sofia is 15 years old, currently in 10th grade, and from the state of Texas. Sophia has been a Spiritist since 2017 and attends the Sunrise Spiritist Society Center. A fun fact about Sophia is that she knows 4 languages: English, Portuguese, Spanish, and sign language. For fun, she enjoys writing poetry, which you all might get lucky enough to hear today. And she currently works as a swim instructor for little kids. When she's older, her dream is to build a youth clinic as a psychologist. Welcome, Sophia. Next up, I want to introduce you all to Bella. Isabella Cabral is 16 years old and from Connecticut and in her junior year of high school. Bella has been a Spiritist her whole life and attends the Spiritist Society of Bridgeport, which is now actually located in Stratford, Connecticut. Bella is very involved with her center and with her youth group. She also has attended several Spiritist youth retreats that are so much fun, and I definitely recommend. Bella is an advocate against gun violence inside and outside of school to ensure the safety of students within the school system. She also partners with her town's Drug Abuse Prevention Coalition to provide mental health services to teenagers. For fun, Bella loves theater and dance, especially tap dance. Her career aspiration is to become a journalist. Welcome, Bella. And last but certainly not least, we have Gabriel Macedo. You will recognize Gabriel from the lovely music we heard this morning and at lunchtime. Gabriel is 17 years old and a high school senior from Florida. Gabriel has been a Spiritist his whole life, but really started focusing on studying Spiritism in 2018. He currently attends Centro Espírita Chico Xavier and participates in many studies there on topics such as the Spiritist doctrine, mediumship, the Spirit's book, and the Gospel according to Spiritism. At his center, he also leads the youth group class, gives passes, and coordinates lectures. When he's not at school or at the Spirit Center, he enjoys playing the piano, as we saw, martial arts, and praying. His dream is to compose classical music and inspire others. Welcome, Gabriel. So far, during this event, we've heard a lot of people talk about mental balance and spirituality. So to start off, what does mental balance mean to you all in your youth perspective, and why is it an important topic for youth? And for this question, we'll start off with Gabriel.
So, first of all, we have to understand and work through developments, right? Because as teenagers, we experience a lot of changes both physically and mentally. And those changes can be a little difficult, right? So we have to find a balance between both of them and do stuff that we like. We should do charity, we should find hobbies to do. And also as teenagers, we have to figure out what we want to do as adults, right? And that can also be a very challenging thing, right? Because there are so many options of so many things that you might want to do. So you always have to try your best during your teenage years. You have to learn discipline. Discipline is everything. When you learn discipline at a young age, that discipline is most likely going to follow through all the way to your old ages.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. I know, you guys are going to see there's a lot of incredible answers coming your way. Bella, what about you? Why do you think this is an important topic for youth, especially?
So first of all, taking care of your sort of mental state and reaching a state of mental balance and striving for that is, first of all, and first and foremost, an act of self-love, being able to analyze yourself and see that I need improvement, and to be able to make that decision so that you can grow and feel better is above all an act of self-love. And it's important for youth and sort of to have this conversation about mental balance because of how much sort of youth today are experiencing. We are experiencing, our generation, a lot of unprecedented sort of experiences. We have sort of the new norms of social media, more social pressures in that sense, but also with the pandemic, how that really took us in sort of in a very developmental stage of our lives, and we were all stuck at home. We couldn't talk. We didn't have that interaction and that real, I guess, fundamental stage of our lives as it had been for a lot of other generations. So, and all of these, I guess, challenges that we've been presented, they're not challenges as much as roadblocks that we can overcome, but they are very much unprecedented, and it took a huge hit. Our generation took a huge hit in terms of our mental state. And so having these conversations with adults and youth alike are super important.
Absolutely. It's really important to remember that today's youth are going through things that we could have never imagined would have happened. Sophia, what are your thoughts on why this is an important topic?
So for me, what mental balance means to me is knowing how to pick yourself back up and working through very difficult situations, because it helps build up resilience, which is very key to mental balance, being able to persevere and go through very difficult situations without giving up. And there's definitely plenty of coping mechanisms that can help us with this. One that I learned that's very helpful is called TIP. And it's a coping mechanism that you use when you're like very close to a panic attack. You're just very super stressed. It's an acronym. It means temperature change, intense exercise, paced breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation. And it's just 4 different things you can do physically that will help ground you and help give you the mental balance, or at least to calm you down so you're able to work through difficult situations logically in that moment. Another thing is knowing that you're not alone. I mean, there are definitely plenty of people that are going through the same, if not quite similar things that you are going through.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Great tip that you already gave us, so thank you. So how can youth identify when they're in a moment of mental balance or mental imbalances? And for this one, we'll start with Sophia.
One way is like seeing how other people perceive you. Your loved ones and your friends, they're always going to tell you, when you're acting up, because they know your normal behavior. You seem kind of sad, or, you've been distancing yourself lately. Is there something wrong? Or you've been more angry. When people say those things to you, it gives you a chance to think, oh, wow, because we don't know how we act. Everything that we do it normally, right? And so when people see it in a different perspective, it encourages self-reflection. We get a chance to say, oh, why are people saying this? Is this true? And we start to question, oh, are we really in that state of mind? So yeah, people can definitely tell us when we're mentally imbalanced.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes we don't want to hear what other people have to say about us, but they can give us really good insights. Bella, what about you on this question?
So what's super important, and I think is the first step to sort of identifying it, is to know yourself and to know your feelings, to not push down or try to hide any emotions that you might be feeling, and to instead sort of follow it. Sort of, if you feel, that feeling that you get, maybe it's like a pit in your stomach, or you feel like something isn't right. Well, ask yourself, why isn't this right? Where is the origin of this feeling? And sort of when you can find that and work through it, it can really allow you to see, like, okay, what do I have to do, or what can I do to return to a state of mental balance? And in addition to emotional stuff, sometimes you can have physical sort of reactions to stuff. So I know, so sometimes with sort of anxiety, you start to tremble, or sometimes you'll get like a headache or a stomach ache. And so listen to your body when you already emotionally don't feel super right, or you're really stressed out, and your body starts giving you these signals, being like, listen to it so that you can pinpoint and sort of administer a course of action to return to the state of mental balance.
Thank you so much for that answer, Bella. And Gabriel, what about you? How can youth identify?
So you have to do a little something called introspection, right? You have to reflect on yourself, either by the end of the day or by the end of the week, right? Really look back at what you did. Think, what I did, was it good or was it bad? You have to know yourself, and you have to know your own actions that you made, right? What do you have to change? What do you have to keep? Or what do you have to improvise? Again, we always have to try to do our best every day.
Absolutely. Reflecting on ourselves is also a great way. Sometimes we just go through the motions and we don't think about what we've done. So that's a great answer. Thank you. So we know that all of us, and including youth, have moments of mental balances and also imbalances. So what are some things that youth can do when they're in those moments of mental imbalance? And for this one, we'll start with Bella.
So when you're in a moment of sort of mental imbalance, first of all, have compassion with yourself and don't punish yourself for feeling this way. It's natural. We are going to come across a lot of challenges. And so find compassion with yourself and show yourself the self-love. Because sort of this insecurities or stuff that can come up, they can trigger a lot of mental imbalance. So making sure you have compassion for yourself and self-love is like one of the top things you can do. And in addition to that, sometimes it's hard. Again, we all know it can be difficult to work through mental imbalances. But as we were talking about earlier, if God put it to, if it's in your life, God knows you can handle it. And even if you think it's very difficult, something that's super, super important, and I could not recommend enough, is therapy. And I know there's the stigma around this word that needs to be broken down, because it's one of the best things you can do for yourself. Genuinely, even when you're in the middle of sort of dealing with a roadblock, therapy is super helpful for allowing you to work through it, but also preemptively is super important. For example, if you know you're going to have like a test coming up, but you don't know the exact date, like a pop quiz, you're going to study the material in class and at home so that when it comes up, you can work through the difficult problems on this, for example, math pop quiz, so that you can pass it. The same goes with sort of these challenges that we experience in life. When you go to therapy or you read Spiritist teachings and you learn these different techniques to work through these challenges, it works the same way. It allows you to evolve more and to work through these states of mental imbalance a lot easier.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so amazing that today's youth is growing with more awareness of therapy, although there still is some stigma around it. So it's really important, like you said, Bella, to share that and to know that therapy is a great tool at any stage of your life. So thank you. Sophia, what about you? What are some things you can do in moments of mental imbalance?
Well, one thing we can do. One thing we can definitely do is ask for help. The first step is always recognizing that we need help. And the second step is asking for it. And there's different ways we can do this. And there is a skill that we can use. It's called Dear Man. It's two acronyms split, Dear and Man. And it's a way that you can ask for help. The D is like describing the situation. So you describe what's going on. You know, I have a bunch of homework. I have a test coming up that I don't know anything about. Just very real, trust me. And then, you know, just expressing it factually what is going on. Then the E is expressing your emotions using I statements. You know, I feel this. I feel stressed out. I feel anxious. I feel worried. I feel sad. Whatever it is that you feel, you say I feel, and then you put your feeling. And then the A in Dear is assert your needs. You need to assert what you want. You know, I feel stressed, so I need someone to help me with my homework. I feel worried, so I need someone to help me study to make sure that I know the material. You know, you make sure you really say what you need help with, how you need the help. And the R is reinforcing with positive things, you know? If you help me, I will do good and everything will be all right. I get good grades. If I ask for help, my suffering or my difficult situation will be a lot easier because I have someone there with me. Another way we can ask for help is by calling numbers. You know, there's certain numbers that we can call. You know, we can call 911 for emergencies. We can call 988, which is the National Mental Health or Suicide Hotline. But I don't recommend calling it if you are very close to committing suicide because they will put you on hold. No, they do. It's unfortunate. They will put you on hold. There's like 800-656-4673, which is a sexual assault line. 866-331-9474, which is the domestic or dating violence line. And 800-931-2237, which is an eating disorder line. So there are different numbers for specific problems that people are suffering with that you can call if you need the help and you don't have anyone to ask.
Thank you so much, Sophia. It's so important for us to have awareness of those hotlines and resources. And a lot of towns and districts do have their own resources. So definitely do some research online because towns sometimes have specific phone numbers you can call. So thank you, Sophia. Sorry.
What about you, Gabe?
What about you,
You're kind
Gabe?
of silent.
Great job, Sophia.
There's so much, right? Prayer. When you pray, before I say anything about it, where does it have to come from? Your heart, right? You have to know what you want. If you're just saying, oh, I want this, I want that, thank you for this day, thank you for this, the prayer is not going to be that effective. And if you're just having a stressful day, right? If you're angry, if you're upset, if you're confused, if you're annoyed, the right answer is to pray. Praying can give you answers. All right. And on question 660 of the Spirit's book, it states that when you pray, God sends good spirits towards your way, and that can help you evolve, right? Because the good spirits are guiding you towards the right path, right? But it's up to you if you really want to choose that path or not. And like I said before, prayers can give you answers, but does that mean that a spirit's literally going to pop up next to you and just be like, hey, go do that? No, right? Unless you're an extensive medium with that type of mediumship. But most likely, the spirit probably won't literally tell you the answer because, again, you have free will. You can do what you want, but it's up to you if you want to choose that path or not.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. So, what are some activities that youth can participate to help them achieve mental balance? We'll start with Sophia on this one.
So one of the things that I do is I use poetry as a way to be able to express my emotions effectively. You know, I can't sometimes when it's all like bottled up inside you and you got that thing inside your belly and inside your chest, you're like, you can't say it. And so when it's put into a written format, it's like really neat and it's just all out there, you know? And I'm able to essentially put ugly things into pretty words. Yeah. And it's also a very great way to talk about uncomfortable topics. So I wrote this where is my poem? I wrote this poem a couple months ago, and I think it's a really great example of this. So if you'll have me, I would like to present my poem, which is called The Comfort of Sadness. The comfort of sadness, hugs you after it beats you with insults, kisses you after feeding dead thoughts in your head, the comfort of sadness. The love that pours from the blood on your wrist, the tired you feel after spending all day in bed, the urge you feel to push away from everyone just for the comfort of sadness. Like a mosquito bite, you're told not to itch, but the itching feels so good, you feel bliss and fulfilling what you felt needed to be done, and that is the comfort of sadness. Trapping us in a cage of illusions and misery, twisting with its hands the way we view reality, buying us black and white glasses in a world full of color, and telling us no one sees the world this way but you, and that is the comfort of sadness. To make you feel different and special so you don't go near no one else, to make you, forcing you to not believe in yourself, a toxic dependent relationship on an emotion that chains you to its feet and says, we're friends. The strange comfort of sadness and its hypnotic pool that leaves us drowning forever. Oh. And that poem was about essentially depression. I mean, I put it in a way where even if you don't have depression, you can sort of understand things that I go through with depression. And so that's an example of how I use my poetry to express my emotions and get people to understand what I'm talking about, even if they don't feel it themselves.
Absolutely. Another round of applause for that beautiful poem. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, this really is an incredible group of youth. Gabriel, what do you think? What are activities youth can participate to help them achieve mental balance?
Well, one of them, obviously, music, right? But I'm
Mhm.
not talking about any style of music, right? I'm specifically going to talk about classical music. Classical music can be a form of meditation, right? If you put a nice, relaxing piece of classical music, do you think you're going to be like hyper all over the place? Most likely not, right? You're going to relax and your spirit also elevates, right? The room, like it changes, right? Classical music can also stimulate your brain, right? So for the younger people here, when you listen to classical music before a big test, right, or before a quiz, you're most likely to remember what you studied than if you listen to any other style of music. Classical music can also help you connect with the spirituality, all right? Like mostly like the calm, soothing pieces from like Beethoven, Mozart, Chopin. They can all help you connect with God, right? Who doesn't want to be connected with God here, right? Everyone does. And it can also inspire you to do things. Let's say a poet, right? He's about to write a poem. The poet can listen to classical music and get inspirations from the music to write out the poem. Or same thing with the musician. If a musician reads a poem, he can also get the inspiration from it and write a piece of music down. That is what happened to Antonio Vivaldi. He based his famous Four Seasons on a poem. And in the book Spiritism in the Arts, published in 1922 by Leon Denis, it states that Beethoven is working with a certain medium for a Spiritist anthem that is soon to be published. So that's a little fun fact.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, as we heard Gabriel's beautiful music, it really is inspiring and puts us in the right mood and the right vibration. Sophia, what about you? What activity do you think can help youth? Bella, what activity do you think youth can participate in to help them achieve mental balance?
So for me, I love dance and theater. There are two ways that I can express myself, but also learn. And really quick, just to bridge everything, all of these sort of activities that we're talking about are really healthy coping mechanisms when you're going through mental imbalances or working through stuff. And when you feel something that you have a passion for, and that you really really enjoy, it's important to have that healthy coping mechanism there, because in our world today, it was talked about earlier, there are a lot of unhealthy, coping mechanisms, such as we see among youth. There's a drug and alcohol abuse, and a lot of other very unhealthy ways with dealing with mental imbalance. And so these activities that we do aren't just activities for funsies, but they are fun, but they're also for being able to work through these mental imbalances in a safe and healthy way. And so for me, I'm going to start off with dance and then I'll go into theater because they both connect. And so dance for me is a very interpretive style of movement. It allows you to convey emotions that you have or emotions that you're working through in whatever piece that you're learning. And sometimes the emotions that you have to convey are different from the ones that you're feeling, and so you sort of have to work through what you're feeling in order to convey this emotion as best as you can. But sometimes it is the emotion that you're feeling that you're trying to convey, which allows you to make deeper and better choices as you're dancing. Including sort of a huge one for me, at least with processing emotion, is improv dancing, in which on the spot you come up with movements that just feel right. And it's a great way to be able to process emotion, to channel whatever I'm feeling into a movement, and sort of every movement I have having a purpose. And sort of, also, dance is exercise. So those endorphins and such that you get from exercise make you feel really good and very energized, which is also a very healthy coping mechanism, just exercise in general. And then sort of moving into the theater side of it, it's a huge learning opportunity. First of all, I just love performing. It's a huge passion for me. And like I said, when you find something that you're passionate about, it makes sort of life easier. And so, but for me at least, watching theater is almost like reading a book. You can pinpoint, oh, I agree with what this character did. I don't agree with what this character did. This is what I would do instead. Sort of being able to see these really difficult situations and interpret them as I would do this if this was if I was in this situation, or in my case, maybe this could be applied to my situation, sort of. And so having these sort of stories and lessons are super, super important as we evolve so that we can learn without necessarily going through these trials. In addition, a huge portion of theater that I do as well is improv theater, which again means you're given like a prompt or a scenario, and without a script, without nothing, you or a group of people will put together a scene on the spot automatically. And so in this, especially with people who have anxiety, you can really tunnel in and focus in the moment on each of the different movements or choices that each of the people are making. And again, it allows you to learn, I would do this next time, or if I was this character, I would have made this decision instead. I like what this person did with this idea, but I think I would have interpreted it differently. Sort of being able to analyze it and again, apply it to our day-to-day lives. Which I also do a lot when I'm directing. When you're given a script, again, you can't watch it, but when you have to look at each of the characters and sort of their different values and personalities and motives, and being able to write a scene, to block a scene that fits all of it. I could go on for days about this, but but it's again, it's just really important to have a healthy coping mechanism to get through these periods of mental imbalance that we all face.
Thank you so much, Bella. And such an incredible group again of teens of doing all activities that I don't do yet, but I'm inspired to take up one of those or all of them. So definitely awesome to see some of the methods you all use to express yourselves and show others how they can put that in their lives. So now the question is, how can Spiritism help you with your journey to mental balance? And we'll start with Bella on this one.
In case you weren't tired enough of me talking, here I am again. So through Spiritism, we learn that our planet we're in planetary evolution always. But right now, Earth is in this transition period. We're a world of trials and atonements, but we are in a transition period. And so that means a lot of the youth today are getting their last chances to sort of evolve as much as they can before we shift sort of in our planetary evolution. And so Spiritism, along with offering sort of this explanation, being like, this is why there's a lot of challenges, it also provides for us, again, opportunities to learn different methods to work through these roadblocks that aren't meant to cut us off and to fall into despair, but for us to improve, for us to evolve. And so, yeah, so Spiritism provides really good explanations for why our youth need to be having these conversations about how to achieve mental balance and work through these issues, because we want to progress as far as we can in this incarnation.
Thank you so much, Bella. Sophia, what about you? How can Spiritism help youth with their journey to mental balance?
Reincarnation. It's really awesome. Question 167 of the Spirit's book says, what is the aim of reincarnation? And the Spirits say expiation, progressive improvement of mankind. Without this aim, where would it be its justice? Reincarnation helps improve and progress humanity through multiple existences. So our mental balance gets better as we go through reincarnation because we are constantly improving. We always go forward, we never go back. So we're always gonna go through trials and tribulations that will help us get better. And in the Spirit's book, Kardec is writing on the chapter reincarnation, and he writes, "It is though a sick man should say, I have suffered enough today, I do not choose to suffer tomorrow. No matter what may be his unwillingness to suffer, he will nevertheless be obliged to go on suffering, not only on the morrow, but day after day until he is cured." We don't stop reincarnating. We don't stop until we have reached perfection, which may not happen in this lifetime, may not happen in the next lifetime, may not happen in the next 50,000 lifetimes. But it is a goal we should always aim for, even if we don't know when it is going to happen. We should always aim for that goal of, being perfection like Jesus. And Kardec is still writing, and he says, the question growing out of the subject we are considering might be multiplied indefinitely for the psychological and moral problems which can only find their solution in the plurality of existences are innumerable. Sometimes we cannot fix things in this lifetime. Sometimes we need reincarnation in order to help us improve and fix our mental imbalance. And saying this to youth is really important because we believe that things are going to go on forever and that there is no end to everything. But even reincarnation isn't forever. It might be a really long time, but it isn't forever, and it will help us get to where we need to be if we do it right.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Gabriel, what about you? How can Spiritism help